Welcome to part 2 of the abstract landscape weaving. Let's get started. Okay, so here is where we left off. I still like it, so that's a really good sign. That's one thing I said in the previous video, was just that sometimes what helps is to walk away from a piece and come back to it with fresh eyes to see if you're still liking it. And I am still liking it. I'm not sure I'm ready for the sky though. I keep having to remind myself that the sky, you know, is probably only going to be able to go to about here. So that kind of helps me visualize. So if I do start the sky, that would mean the sky is approximately 2/3 of the whole piece and the groundwork is about 1/3, which is a very nice, satisfying to look at ratio. So that's pretty good. I'm just wondering if I should add something right here because these colors are quite light, and I could just go in with the light blue automatically once I start that section, but I am wondering if adding some more dark green on this side would look a little bit more balanced and give this more shape, because right now I'm not loving this shape where we have sort of a nice hill, and then it kind of goes down. So you know, we could add sort of a section like this. Let's try some things. Here's what I'm looking at. I have 3 sections of that faded browny green color. Then we have sort of more brown. So we have brown, brown, brown. And then we have light green, light green. So is light green the right choice? It could be. Maybe a better choice would be to do dark green first and then some light green over top, because we have dark green, dark green. I feel like I need a little bit more of that. Since we've used 2 different dark green materials, so we have the cotton down here, we have roving here. I do have this kind of thick and thin, slubby, felted yarn. That's the best way I can describe it. I'll try to put as many links for the materials I'm using in the description box below. Maybe I can build up the right side just a hair, kind of right off of this section. And I kind of don't want to cut a piece off of this yet until I know I'm gonna like it. See, now I'm thinking that the texture of this yarn and the texture of this yarn are too similar because they're basically exactly the same. So I don't think that's gonna be the right choice for that section. But I do think I'm liking this coming all the way across, even though it's just a little bit. Maybe this dark green is just a better choice. I just also don't want this section to look exactly like this one. I'm trying to really find the balance here. I could do a little bit more knotting and just bring it kind of in this section. Why don't we try that? I do like the depth that this is bringing to this color because this color is so muted. I think that's the best way I can describe it. It's actually kind of similar to the color of the linen, but a little bit darker. So I think this slightly more saturated color, this like deeper green, looks really nice over top of it, and we're getting some more definition there. And I do like how this is kind of flowing here to give us that rolling hill kind of look. All right, do I come all the way across with this? That's what I'm unsure about, because right now we're doing something very similar to what we did down here. So this one goes from here to about here. Now I could bring this a little bit further, not with knots, but just with plain weave, just so it goes a bit further than this one did. And I could leave it more out in the middle. So again, it does feel different than what I did here. And I'm thinking that that is a good idea. So now I want to talk about bringing in more of this. But again, as you can see, I did this on this side. So how do I do that is kind of the question I have, because I don't want it to look like this is here and then we just have like another one stacked right on top of it. So I could choose a slightly different color so that it breaks that up a bit, but it's still something that brings in this slightly lighter green into things. I do actually think that could be pretty. It has a slight, there's a little bit more blue in this one, which could kind of meld nicely into what will be the sky. I don't think that looks the best. I think This is making all three of these colors meld together in a way that I'm not loving. So I'm glad I didn't cut a piece of that. I think that's the same conclusion I came to last time too, was just that this one was maybe a little bit too blue. And you know, I don't have to bring in more of the light green. Like 2 is enough. We have 1 near the top. Maybe I just leave it at that. Maybe we're done the groundwork now. Let's start working on the sky. After I make sure all my warp strings are not twisting. So the sky. I think what I would like to do is try to set aside all of my greens now as to not be as distracted by them. Let's bring in all the blues and the beige. We've got a lot to choose from. It's a little bit intimidating. I don't know how much contrast I want throughout the sky. Do we want to have it be a really moody sky? Do we want it to have like almost a gradation effect? Should there be a lot of texture or perhaps hardly any texture? These are the questions that I have. What I don't want to do is make this piece so busy that when you look at it, it's just a bit overwhelming and there's not sort of a focal point. And to me, in this piece, I think what I want to go for is more of the sky being the background and this landscape aspect of it to be what's going to kind of pop when you look at it. And now I'm just playing around with things to give it a little bit more shape before we move on. So in terms of subtlety, I could weave, you know, the majority of the sky just with plain weave, just with 1 or 2 colors and make it really pretty. This is a beautifully soft color we have right here that I think really makes the greens pop, but we also have some dark blues. You know, I have a lot of different shades of blue that I could choose from. I do have a cotton frizz ribbon in a blue. However, I don't think that's going to be the right texture for the sky because it does feel a little bit more plant-like to me. So maybe that's one way we can differentiate between the 2 sections. My gut is telling me to start with the light blue simply because of the contrast it provides between the foreground and what is going to be the sky. I also like the idea, you know, there's so many different ways you can do a sky. You can kind of go from dark at the bottom to light at the top. You can do the reverse. And that's kind of what I'm leaning toward, I think, because the bottom is darker and heavier already. It may look better to start with the light and sort of move into a slightly moodier look over here. Okay, let me grab a bunch of this and we're just gonna try it. I am weaving over 2 under 2. I'm leaning toward the idea that not seeing as much of the warp strings in this one for the sky is what I want. I'm already loving how this very pale, almost grayish blue is looking next to the green. It's like making it pop, because what I felt when I just see the bottom, like if I had a whole weaving of just this, it feels kind of heavy and muddy. But it's like as soon as you add that pop of blue, it's helping to lift this piece, which I absolutely love. It's such a pretty color. One thing that I could do to sort of have this color that is fading into another color is I could start, it's like a gradation. So I could start bringing in this blue partway through, which I think would be really pretty. I just have to figure out the math of it. So my thoughts are between here and here, we're gonna have a section of just the light blue and a section of just the dark blue. And then in between those, we would have a mixture of the 2. So I kind of grabbed some other blues that I have. I think this one is a bit too vibrant in comparison to the others. The others feel more muted, a little bit more subdued. So could we figure out a way to go all the way from this light to this dark? Is that gonna look good? I'm not sure about this one. It might be a bit too dark. What would happen if we just throw in a random slightly darker color here and there? I don't know. Gonna have a lot of ends to tuck in. However, if it's worth it, it's worth it. Now, I don't regret filling in these sections straight, but I am kind of thinking that throughout the background, I'm not sure it can be so perfectly horizontal because I don't know that that's gonna match up with what we did on the bottom. So what would happen if I just very subtly built up sections that have more shape to them? I'm really trying to paint with the yarn. But it's like, it's harder than it sounds. Maybe it does sound hard. All right, so I've added in some of this more like a light denim blue, followed by the silk chiffon. I've done a little bit more of the light blue, and now I think I want to add a little bit more of this blue over here. But you can see that we are building up this end a little bit more than this end, so I'm gonna need to try to fill this in again as well. But I'm liking this so far. It feels like it's very subtle, and it does feel a little bit painterly, which is nice. But yeah, I think we need some more of this denim blue now. So I've got a little bit of that darker blue in there. Now I want to go back in with a lighter blue, and then we'll probably add in some more of the lighter silk chiffon again to kind of balance things as we go. And as I move further to the top, I do want to start bringing in slightly darker blues. So I've got, you know, a bit of a darker chiffon. I mean, I could add that in at any time really. And I also have this darker navy cotton yarn. I don't know for sure if that's going to feel too harsh, but we'll figure it out. Okay, I do like that. Again, sticking with the very like subtle color changes, nothing too contrasted until we get a little further up anyway. So I'm just trying to think to myself of where I'm headed. We've got the light silk chiffon, we have this light blue. I'm wondering about using some roving now to add a little bit more light blue and then start to go in the direction of getting deeper. So there's a couple different color options. We have this quite light blue. It's more in the realm of this yarn we were already using. And then I have the slightly darker one. I think we could probably save that for further into this. Maybe we put some of this in here. I want it to be quite thin. So this is about a quarter width of roving. I'm always trying to stagger things. So with this silk ribbon, I came all the way over here and then I turned around, or sorry, I started here and then came back to here. With the cotton frizz, I stayed in this little section. So with this piece, you know, maybe it's all out in the middle, just to give us something a little bit different from what we've already done. Okay, I just want to like take a little pause, look at this from further away and see what I think about it. This section to me is definitely feeling more, as I mentioned earlier, painterly. I really, really like it. It feels subtle. So maybe part of the thing I was struggling with down here is that, well, actually I still really like what's going on down here, but it's like in this section, I'm able to get the colors mixing a bit better, but I'm actually not sure that would have been the best choice for this section. Like we do need definition in the foreground so that you can kind of see what it's supposed to be. Whereas in the sky, I mean, the sky is typically very wispy, very colors really mixing with other colors, not necessarily always a lot of really defined shapes. So I'm very happy with how this is feeling, because to me it definitely feels like that. So I think what I need to do is just keep going now. I do like how it feels like we're gradually getting a little darker. Now, that being said, I'm not quite ready to go all the way to like the medium tone section. So I'm gonna add in a little bit more of the light blue again. I'm looking at this, I'm trying to decide where I'm going next, how much more I want to do before I start allowing this to get a little bit darker. I'm almost to another third, and I mean, arguably, this is 2/3 because we have sort of the taller bits and the more shallow parts. So if this is, that actually works out really nice. So this could potentially be, you know, the piece could only go till there. That is an option. Will that look good? Is always the question. If I ended it a little bit shorter, it would be more of a landscape ratio, like a landscape, if that makes sense. Instead of a vertical landscape, it would be more of a horizontal landscape. I think the only thing I can do is to keep going with the sky until it feels like it's enough. And it definitely isn't enough yet. I do want to bring in the darker colors. Now, what do I want to add in next? I could just go ahead and start with a slightly darker color now. So I have this wool roving, and like I said, we do have a darker option for the silk chiffon. I have a very dark cotton that I'm not too sure is gonna look the best because it is very, very dark. I just found some cotton frizz ribbon that I didn't know I had. So it's like this really beautiful dark color. It's actually probably dyed the same color as this silk chiffon. It looks a little bit different, but that can happen with different materials. But I kind of like that idea because then we can bring in all the same aspects that we did in this section, just in deeper colors. And I could just decide that I don't use this one at all, but it could look really nice as well. Is that gonna feel just too deep? And we don't necessarily have to add it now. I could wait until we've added some of the other elements. So the darker silk chiffon, the darker cotton frizz, the darker, I definitely think this color is what should happen next, actually, now that I'm looking at it, because this is sort of the bridge between this section and what will be the next section. Oh, I really like that color. It's so good. Paying attention to my sides again, because man, those can get away from you. So I have a brief thought in my mind about how would it have made more sense to start with the deeper color and then move up to the lighter color? And while I think maybe, I just really love the contrast between this more muddied green section. I keep saying muddy, I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's just like this more earthy color scheme to this light blue, and I love the contrast between those. So I don't think it would have worked quite as nicely. I'm only gonna do the one row of that dark blue for now because I don't want it to start to feel really heavy really quickly. Okay, I do like that. It feels less harsh of a transition than if I did the cotton frizz ribbon that's so deep. So now that we have that in, I want to come back in with this darker color again because we are trying to slowly have this fade into those deep colors. I have one concern, and that is that this line between where it's dark and where where it's light and we're starting to go dark might be too harsh, like might be too noticeable. The only thing I can think to do is add a little bit of the light blue back in, maybe underneath the dark blue. Let's try that, because I do feel like the transition is a little bit more harsh than I was aiming for. So I'm just gonna carefully push up all of that. There's gonna be so many ends to tuck in, but I definitely think it's gonna be worth it. So I'm going in with the lighter blue again, and then I'll do a little bit more of the medium and then a little bit more of the light, really trying to blend all of those colors together. The dark one just really stands out, and I do wish I had a slightly lighter one to work with, but I just couldn't find anything that was quite right. And I think I'll just have to keep working in some of the lighter blue so that it sort of eases in the darker colors instead of having such a stark line where it's decidedly darker. Finally, I'm ready to add some of this in. Still a little bit nervous about the color, but I definitely think we can make it work. For this part, I do think it would be a good idea to keep this cotton frizz ribbon out in the middle, kind of like what we did with the roving down in here, just because we do have cotton frizz that goes to the edge and goes to the edge. So I kind of want to switch it up over here in the middle just to give us something a little bit different. Now that it's in, I'm already really liking that color, so that's good news. We'll go to about here. Going back in with the medium blue again and just really focusing on blending those colors together. I'm ready to add some more of the silk chiffon, and we're gonna bring it over to this side this time, since we had it on this side last time. And after I add the silk chiffon, I'm gonna need to add in more of this dark blue so that we're getting it in there a bit more frequently as we go. I'm actually debating on if I should add some in already. Okay, before I put the silk chiffon in, I am gonna add a little bit more of the dark blue. And we'll also be adding the dark blue on top of it, but this one is just, it's harder to blend it in since it is so dark. I was a little bit worried about how much just this plain weave was over here, but I'm realizing I did the same thing over here, so it is kind of throughout, so that's okay. So I want to take a piece of this and go partway across. Now, one thing I'm going to be paying attention to is where this turned around, where this turned around, where this turned around. I think I want to end up somewhere in the middle of that, just so that it's not, it's kind of like laying wood floors. You know, when you lay wood floors properly and you're not seeing just all these lines where the boards meet up all being the same, it's staggered. That's kind of how it looks the most natural. That's what I'm trying to do with this weaving as well. So let's start weaving this piece in and see what looks good. So I have an end here, end here, end here, end here. So if I went to about here, that would still allow us to stagger it so that it looks different than what I did in the previous row. Okay, I'm so happy with the progress of this piece. Stay tuned for part 3, and in the meantime, check out this video next.